Chapter 21, Reflecting and Looking Forward. Quote, "It's difficult to know how to think about the HTP ending. I'm not sure whether to feel worried, sad, or relieved." End quote. Jennifer. Every model of therapy or personal development is different. Some are gentler and ask less of the individual, while paying attention to safety and the need for participants to be well supported. The historical trauma program is admittedly fairly intense and asks quite a lot. You have been required to explore painful memories, to work hard at developing insight, to take on board some complex psychological ideas, and sometimes to transfer what is learned into your life. The historical trauma program thinks about the ending in an unusual way. While you are nearing the end of the guidebook, you are not coming to the end of your recovery work. We hope that the HTP has helped you feel more insightful or confident in your recovery work, but the work will continue. That just seems to be the nature of childhood trauma. Toward the outset of the guidebook, we said, "At the moment, this guidebook is identical to every copy. When you finish, there will be a lot of you between these pages." This is true, isn't it? The guidebook contains ideas and practices from trauma studies, the voices of others who experienced childhood trauma, and clinician observations. But your reflections, insights, and experiences are here as well. The work you have done will have at times been hard-won. It won't have been simple or easy. If the guidebook helps you face your future recovery work with a bit more insight and confidence, that will reflect what you have done here. And if you have moments of confusion or distress, and you probably will, the guidebook and the work you have done will be here. You own this work. This final chapter represents an opportunity for you to pull together 1. Change which you believe you have made at the level of insight. 2. Change at the level of doing. Some may have had moments of experimenting with change within their life, relationships, or how you relate to yourself. 3. What you feel you have not dealt with as yet. You will realize there is more work to be done, and you can describe that as well. 4. The way forward. There is a reason it can be helpful to pull together the work you have done. Past trauma is not interested in stepping aside graciously in order to make way for your ongoing recovery. Despite all the work you have done, your past trauma will continue to want to run your life. Consolidating what you have learned is a good basis for the continued fight to overcome the impact of past events. Change at the level of insight. When many people think about creating change or personal development, what comes to mind are changes which occur in their lives, like getting a new job, starting a new relationship, or taking up a new hobby. However, in respect to trauma-based therapy or personal development work, being able to see or think about something from a different perspective can represent important change. We might call this change at the level of insight, because that's just what it is. It's important not to underestimate how important insight is and what you have had to face in order to achieve it. However, what constitutes insight in respect to your work with the HTP program is very individual. We can highlight what change at the level of insight has meant for a handful of HTP clients to help illustrate the idea, but how insight has worked for you will be quite personal. Below represents changes at the level of insight for certain HTP clients. Quote, "I'd heard of self-compassion, but I hadn't really thought about it. Realizing how much of a problem self-compassion is for me was an eye-opener. I've seen how much work I've got to do in this area." End quote. Marie. Quote, when I was little, I thought my parents hurt me because I was bad. Now I can see that I just thought I was a bad kid because of the way they treated me. End quote. Barbara. Quote, I'd never heard of CPTSD. That opened my eyes because I have all of those issues. Knowing there is a name for my problems helps me think and talk about my problems differently. End quote. Claudine. Quote, I've always felt like a mutant, like some sort of alien, but hearing other people's stories has made me realize that I'm not as weird as I thought. End quote. Reynold. Quote, for years I've just thought I had made a mess of my life, but the guidebook has helped me connect what happened as a child with all of the problems I've had as an adult. End quote. John. Quote, I always knew that I had bad self-esteem and not much confidence, but the work on trauma-based shame sort of opened my eyes. I had never thought about it like that. When I start to feel awful about myself, I can see it as shame and connect it to what happened to me. End quote. Alan. Quote, traumatic core beliefs were new to me, but they helped explain why I just flip into these awful thoughts and feelings when there is some trigger. I need to learn more about that when I finish the program. End quote. Julie. Quote, I've always felt everything so intensely in my body, like the way my heart pounds, and I want to escape when I'm around people. A bunch of doctors have said I have an anxiety disorder, but that doesn't explain anything. The chapter on the body and that polyvagal thing helped me understand my anxiety in a completely different way. End quote. Marianne. Quote, I've known that my relationships to men aren't good, but I've really come to see that I need to be able to set boundaries, say what I need, and not let people just keep hurting me. End quote. Maggie. Exercise 1. Change at the level of insight. Change at the level of insight will be personal for you. Has the program helped you see or think about your past, yourself, or relationships differently? For some, scanning the table of contents or parts of the guidebook can help. Please pause the audio and complete exercise 1 in the guidebook. Change at the level of doing. Some who have engaged with the HTP will mainly have been working with change at the level of insight. For these individuals, making changes in the context of one's life and relationships may take more of a backseat. That's all right, and these individuals will have plenty of opportunities following their work with the HTP to transfer their insights into their lives and relationships. The severity and complexity of problems for certain individuals means that change will be slower, and everyone needs to go at a pace which they can manage. However, some will have developed insight and will have been experimenting with change at the level of doing in their relationships, lives, and how they relate to themselves. Also, and this might seem odd, behavioral change can occur in your head, in the way you think. If you have been able to respond differently in how you think about situations, that's internal behavior happening through your thoughts. Many people forget to give themselves credit for this form of change. There is no end to the different ways change at the level of doing can happen. We have seen individuals take new risks, such as joining a dating website, joining a social group, being more assertive with friends or partners, thinking differently in response to triggers, making or developing friendships, setting boundaries in relationships, ending a destructive relationship, applying for jobs or an educational program, developing a creative project, etc. Some will have talked about their past abuse or neglect with people in their lives, rather than holding on to the secrets, which in itself is an important change. But change at the level of doing does not have to be something objectively big in order for it to be important to an individual. Sally experienced multiple forms of childhood abuse and had not gone to a professional hairdresser for over 20 years. Her confidence had been so shattered and her mistrust of people so great that she had been cutting her own hair all these years. Before the end of her therapy, she had her hair cut at a salon. For Sally, that was huge change at the level of doing. Every individual is starting at a different place, and so what represents important change at the level of doing is personal. We recall the final session of one group in which Brandon, who experienced physical and emotional abuse, appeared rather disheartened. He said, quote, "I don't think I've made any real changes or done anything differently." End quote. Another group member then gave him some feedback, reminding him that he had previously described a long pattern of avoiding or quitting anything that caused him anxiety. In fact, he had experienced impulses to quit the therapy group on more than one occasion. The point was clear. Brandon had completed group therapy, an accomplishment which had broken a long pattern of social avoidance and disengagement. Exercise 2. Experimenting with change at the level of doing. Can you recognize attempts you have made to do things differently? Don't sell yourself short. Every effort at change counts. Remember that it's not just behavioral changes happening in relationships and life, but internal change in terms of being able to think differently about circumstances or yourself. What comes to mind? Please pause the audio and complete exercise 2 in the guidebook. Your recovery. What do you still need to work on? The goal of this program was never for you to get rid of tension or conflict. The goal was always to help you live as well as possible with tension or conflict. We have never had any illusions about how difficult recovering from childhood trauma can be. The exercise below offers you an opportunity to reflect on the problems you continue to struggle with. Some will have learned that they have absorbed some very punitive messages and that they want to develop more compassionate ways of being with themselves. Some will recognize that they need healthier relationships and that they want to take some risks in making this happen. Some will have started dealing with painful post-traumatic reactions, but they have a ways to go in this respect. Some will have discovered that they really struggle with attentional problems, and approaches like mindfulness may be something they want to explore further. Some will realize that traumatic core beliefs are a significant problem, and they want to focus on this issue more. Some will appreciate that they keep being re-traumatized, and it's an area needing more attention. Some will have made a start at communicating with others about what happened to them and the problems they have, but this is something they need to do further. Exercise 3. What are the problems or issues which you continue to struggle with? Is there something you have started working on, but which you want to continue learning about or developing? Is there further personal development work you want to focus on? What's your growing edge? Please pause the audio and complete exercise 3 in the guidebook. What next? For most, completing the historical trauma program doesn't mean they feel they are done with learning about their past and related difficulties. For some individuals, perhaps those who are newer to working on recovery, the HTP may even feel like just the beginning. Maybe after completing the HTP, you feel like you need a break from thinking about your past, and perhaps you just want to get on with your life for a while before picking up on further personal development work. Others may feel hungry to learn more in this area straight away. Whether you need a break from your recovery or want to dive into more work, we encourage you to keep going. It's not unusual for participants to complete the HTP and wonder, what might I focus on next concerning my personal development? This is a very personal question, and the answer will be different depending on the individual. Perhaps you will identify a way forward we haven't even considered, but below we share a few thoughts. 1. There are a lot of good books to read on the subject. We highlight several at the end of this text, but web and Amazon searches can also be useful. 2. If you have done the HTP as self-help, perhaps individual or group therapy is something you may wish to pursue. If you have used the HTP to support individual therapy, perhaps moving on to group therapy interests you. 3. If available in your area, a community support group for people who experienced complex trauma can be very useful to some. If one doesn't exist, maybe it should. Perhaps this can be done in cooperation with mental health services in your area. At the end of this book is a section on starting a community support group. 4. Perhaps your involvement with this program has put you in touch with some creative project related to the work you have been doing. This might relate to writing, art, further education you wish to do, etc. Perhaps there are social groups related to this area of interest you can consider. 5. Perhaps the program has helped you develop more confidence in yourself and a desire to develop existing relationships or create new ones. The Personalized HTP Certificate of Completion. The HTP is a model of self-help or can be used to support individual therapy. It's not a course or training, so the idea of a personalized certificate of completion may seem odd. However, the HTP has required a great deal of time and commitment. While some do not feel the need for a certificate, in our experience, many people who complete the program wish to have one. It seems to symbolize and act as a reminder of all the work they put into it. One person framed it and hung it on the wall of their home office. He told us he would show it to certain people who visited and joke that it was his SANE certificate. While a funny joke, there was something serious about the quip. He had kept his past a secret for many years, so telling people about his experience of the HTP was a way of breaking that pattern. Apparently, the certificate can also elicit some complex feelings for a few people. One person we worked with tore up a certificate and threw it in a recycling bin on the way out of a final session. 3 days later, she called the office, said she regretted her decision, and asked for another certificate. If you would like a personalized certificate, one can be downloaded at the HTP website. If you have any difficulties obtaining the certificate, contact us through the website or by email. See details at the end of the guidebook. Finally, you came to this program as someone who experienced childhood trauma. What happened to you will always be a part of who you are, and so you will leave this program as someone who experienced childhood trauma. But as the program has explored from many different angles, you can assert some control over the effects of past abuse, neglect, or abandonment. Whether this means standing up to traumatic core beliefs, coping in ways in which your needs are met, avoiding re-traumatization, developing healthier relationships, or creating meaning in response to your past suffering, there is always something you can work at. If it feels like you have made substantial progress in this program, we are pleased. But many individuals will feel there is still a long road ahead. Some will feel like they are just beginning. That's okay too. Just keep going. If you have moments where you feel yourself falling into isolation, depression, or hopelessness, perhaps an idea expressed by the French-American photographer Elliott Erwitt will help. Quote, keep working, because as you go through the process, things begin to happen. End quote. With all of this in mind, we leave you with the words of Sam, who we quoted elsewhere. In a sense, perhaps her words say it all. Quote, I face what happened most days in my thoughts and feelings and sometimes my dreams. But what happened won't define me. End quote. This completes the audio for the chapter on reflecting and looking forward